today. Again, going back to my earlier point, that people need hope, people need belief, people need to be part of the process. And I think it's fundamentally important that we get people involved in the decisions we're making as we try and move this state forward in laying a new foundation for economic growth. The third element is, of course, what is our strategy for trying to move Michigan forward? What is our economic growth strategy? And I break it down into two components. The first thing is that we need to be absolutely proactive in the sense that we need to develop a plan that's going to move this state forward. You know, as a community organizer, you know, if you don't have a plan, it's very difficult to organize. In other words, you can't organize unless you have a plan. And so I think we need to systematically be planning on how we're going to rebuild this state and how we're going to build a new foundation for economic growth. Now, I would argue that we need to do this on two levels. The first level is that I think we need to divide the state into various regions, and we need to assess the strengths as well as the weaknesses that each of the regions of the state present in terms of trying to promote economic development within that area. And we can all imagine what the various regions are around the state. So that's the first component. The second component, of course, is what should we be doing at the state level in order to properly create the conditions that more businesses either want to relocate to Michigan and create new jobs, or that people who currently live within Michigan are willing to reinvest in this state to expand their operation. And I basically come up with 5 what I would consider the most critical conditions that we need to act upon to strengthen in order to make this state the kind of place that business people want to come to locate and to continue to work, as well as people for that matter. And some of these, ironically enough, we also talked about during our dinner, our presentation earlier. The first one is education. You know, I think K through 12 education, the community colleges, and higher education is so critical for the state's future. If you read at all regularly the New York Times or other publications, or you read stuff that the Greater Detroit Chamber puts out and some of the Detroit Renaissance, and look around some of the other states around the country, there's a common denominator for economic growth in a lot of these places, which is investing in higher education. Businesses, especially the new high-tech internet businesses, they want to locate in states that have a premium on education, that cranks out, that graduates young people or even middle-aged people to be well-versed in technology and the internet stuff to locate in. And so I think that it's fundamentally important that we prioritize the education system in this state to make it the kind of education system that will draw entrepreneurs and other businesses. Now, we do have a pretty extensive educational system, and one of the things we need to be thinking about is whether it's running as well as it could be. And so there's a lot to be talked about here, and we can leave it up for discussions during the question and answer period. But I just think fundamentally the educational system is something that has to be strengthened, and we need to make it affordable so people are able to go to school and not rack up tremendous amount of loans in the process. The second component I think is very important is infrastructure improvements. Because we need to have broadband internet all over the state. We need to have the roads in place, quality roads. We need to have the storm sewers and the schools in place so that businesses can locate here and take advantage of a well-organized infrastructure that will support what they're trying to do. The third element I think is incredibly important is the natural environment, the resources in the Great Lakes in Michigan. I mean, we all understand that we are blessed in this state with some of the most unique, natural resources and Great Lakes in the entire country. I mean, I think so often we live here and we go to the Great Lakes and we go hunting and fishing and canoeing that we don't realize that we really are in a unique situation as compared to the rest of the country. And I think we need to focus on this, nurture the natural resources, the natural environment, and use it as something that we can draw people to Michigan to promote the kind of quality of life that we have here that other states don't have. I don't think we factor that into our economic planning to the degree that we ought to be doing. The fourth element, of course, is healthcare. I mean, we've already touched upon healthcare. I mean, we can go on and on and on about healthcare, but we live in a global economy. Michigan manufacturing, they're trying to do the right thing in providing healthcare for their employees, but frankly, they're competing against companies that are around the world that don't have to offer healthcare because, in fact, their home country does. It's a tremendous competitive disadvantage for Michigan manufacturers and Michigan employers, and frankly, there's a lot of people that now work for themselves. They're free agents, they're entrepreneurs, they work out of their homes, and they're not part of an employer-based healthcare system. And so a lot of cases they have to try and purchase health care on the individual market, which is extremely expensive. So we need to reform health care in order to make Michigan a place that, again, it can be the kind of place that businesses would want to locate. And frankly, I think it's going to be critical that President Obama does this, because the same argument I'm making about Michigan applies for the whole country as a whole. And there's only certain things we can do at a state-based level to reform health care, and we have to have it at the national level. But nonetheless, we need to make sure that we focus on this as a part of our economic redevelopment strategy here in Michigan. And finally, the fifth element. Now, the fifth element is a little bit abstract, but I think it's very, very important. I would argue that we need to do a much better job in developing a sense of community within this state. We are a very diverse state with many different ethnicities, many different religions, and people of many different lifestyles. And what you read when you look around the country in terms of economic development strategies, this is always listed as one of the critical conditions that a lot of new businesses want to be a part of. We want to be in a state where peoples are respected and they welcome diversity and they welcome people of various lifestyles. And Michigan, frankly, has taken the hit the last few years. And I think we need to do a much better job in making people feel welcomed in this state. Because I think you will find that we will attract even more people from around the country that want to move to our state, they want to start businesses, they want to build a life here. And so promoting a sense of community, I think, is very, very important for establishing kind of a new road for economic development in this state. I'm going to stop there on those. Those are some of my ideas. But one of the things I'm very much interested in as I begin this campaign for governor is that I want to reach out to everybody in this room and everywhere else to get your sense of ideas and strategies on how we can rebuild this state. I actually have a website, www.johnfreeman.org, and there's some cards over there on the table there, where I blatantly want people to go on the website and share with me your thoughts and ideas about what you think we should be doing to promote a better Michigan. Now I want to talk a little bit about my background, because most of you probably don't know me at all. I mean, a few of you do. And I think it's very important that you have a sense of who I am and, frankly, what I bring to this campaign for governor in this state. First of all, I've lived in Michigan for the most part my entire life. I was born in Ann Arbor, raised in Birmingham, Michigan. I went to University of Michigan, and after leaving for a while to do the community organizing thing with Acorn, I came back to Michigan and went to law school at University of Detroit in downtown. I've practiced both in the public as well as in the private sector. My public sector experience, of course, is with the Michigan legislature. I was elected in 1992, served my 3 terms. I had both the honor and misfortune of getting elected in 1992. The honor was I got to serve with some women and some men who had been in the legislature for many, many years, prior to term limits. And having a chance to meet them and work with them was a tremendous honor. But I also was elected on the same ballot as term limits was enacted. And so the clock started ticking for me as well as for everybody else in January of 1993. So I was in the very first class of legislators to be termed out at the end of 1998. But I relished that experience because I learned a lot about how to move legislation, how to build coalitions in support of legislation, and I just had a tremendous experience in trying to work on legislation I thought was very important for my district as well as important for the state as a whole. But then I did leave the legislature, and by that time I had gotten married. Some of you may have known my wife. My wife is Amy Chapman, who ran the Obama campaign in Michigan, the cycle. I wish he was here.